You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
Welcome to the Hot Options Report, your premier source for insight into the fast-moving options market. Each day, we'll track down the products that are dominating the options chains and impacting your trading account, from Nvidia to VIX and everything in between. If it's lighting up the options tape, then you'll find it on the Hot Options Report.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back to wrap up your trading day on the Hot Options Report for Thursday, November 6th. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks are binging. Make sure you're checking out the full network wherever you're getting your favorite podcast. You're not missing out on all the other fun stuff. And, of course, if you want to join us for fun extras like the official after party of Volatility Views and great pro Q&As and giveaways and live streams and legit exclusives nobody else is going to get, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. And while you're checking things out online, make sure you're checking out the data that goes along with this show. It's the custom report for this show, the hotoptionsreport.com. It's so easy. It's just the name of the show. And guess what? You can't beat the price. It's free data. And it's awesome data. It's going to beat a lot of what your brokers bring to the table. Trust me, the Hot Options Report. I want to thank Nick and the crew over there at Quick Options for throwing that together very quickly, just for you, the listeners of this show. So while you're listening along, after the fact, it runs all day long, so you can generate those reports whenever you want, whenever the mood strikes you, the hotoptionsreport.com. As we keep on rolling into the action, what was lighting it up out there on a mostly blood red day in the markets, and indeed a spicy day on the vol front? VIX cash got north of a 20 handle, up to about a 20-30 before settling out right around 19.5. Still gaining about a 1.5 on the day, putting up 686,000 contracts. That's interesting because it was at about 500,000 right about noon today. And then the second half of the session, once again, failing to materialize. The ADV is nearly 1 million contracts a day, 949,000 contracts. So it needs to get out of gear if it's going to maintain that very lofty ADV, which VIX has struggled to do in the past. The hot option out there on a decently active day in the VIX, nearly 30,000 of the NOV 16 puts. Average price for these, about 9 cents. These were kind of an intriguing one to us listeners. I thought we'd ask you folks. Are you down to buy those, or are you saying sold to you? Again, it's only 9 cents. And right now, thankfully, over half of you, about 54%, are saying you want to buy them. 46% are still willing to take 9 cents. So kind of interesting. Get over there at Options and make your voice heard as we head on over to SPY land. SPY, like we said, giving up the ghost, closing off over 1%, a little over 1.1%. SPY, though, roaring out of the gate hot today, putting up over 11.4 million contracts out there. Again, these volume numbers kind of wild out here today, maybe showing us that there are some other things afoot out here. We've been talking for a while about the other shoe potentially dropping. I'm not saying this is it, but these are definitely some very interesting volume numbers. Not the kind of volume numbers you see in a normal red day. We saw a sell-off just a couple of sessions ago, and we didn't see this type of volume out there. So interesting stuff. Not quite the record, obviously, for SPY. The recent record goes back to April 4th, 15.4 million contracts, but 11.4, no slouch. Still an impressive day. The ADV, 9.6 million contracts out there, so definitely blowing that away. The hot option in SPY land today, by the way, SPY closing a little bit north of 670 in the third. And the hot option out there, it was the 670 puts, our old pals. 416,000 of those going up today. Average price for those, about 87 cents. As we keep on rolling to the S also exceeding expectations. Nearly 4.9 million contracts going up against an ADV of 4.3 million out there. The S closing again off a little over 1.1%. 67.20 and a third is where the S went out today. The hot option, appropriately enough, the 67.20 puts, 163,000 of those bad boys changing hands. Average price for those, $6.04. Now, obviously, if you rode those into the close and you bought them, maybe not the happiest of campers, but you had a lot of opportunities intraday as we were vacillating up and down to get rid of them for better levels. As we keep on rolling out to small caps have kind of been the secret story of this market action recently. They've been putting up nigh on record numbers day after day and putting up a banger again today, 1.82 million. The ADV is already up to about 1.8 million, which is kind of wild just how much paper is changing hands in small caps right now. Small caps giving up the ghost off 1.8% today, closing 240 and a third. Listeners, and the hot option out there, 113,000 of the 230 puts in November. So once again, no downside leading the dance and looking even better. We talked about 235s, 240 puts. Those are looking pretty good right now in November. So a lot of no downside has been lighting up the tape in small caps. And today it's the 230 puts as we keep on rolling to the Qs. The Qs might be the story of the day, though. They had already pretty much hit their ADV by about noon today. So it seemed like it was going to be a true banger, and that was indeed the case. 6.65 million contracts on the tape for the Qs. That's against an ADV of just 5 million contracts. So that's already impressive, but 6.65 million contracts, that is an absolutely wild number out here for the Qs. Listeners, now we've seen more. We've seen a little under 1 million contracts more. About 7.4 million contracts was the high in the Qs, set not back in April, but actually a little less than a month ago, October 10th. So 7.4 million, 6.65 million today. Either way, it was a hot day out there in the Qs, listeners. The Qs closing 611 and 2/3 off, nearly 2%, 1.9%. So they're coming for tech today. The hot option out there, 214,000 of the 615 calls expiring today. That's an interesting one. Average price for these about $1.06. Looks like some folks maybe nibbling on a little bit of bounce to the upside. And we did see some intraday vacillation, so they could have had a chance if they bought those to get them off. If you sold them, looking decent, even if you had to sweat throughout most of the day for it. As we keep on rolling out to the single name equity options. Was it a sweaty day in single name equity options? The answer was it was decent. It started off looking really good. As of our option block show around noon, we were already at about 450,000 contracts, which is our threshold for a really action-packed day. Didn't exceed it by that much at the end of the day. Again, the second half of the session, not living up to the first. Only cost you 644,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. That's respectable. Not blowing the doors off. Not a million. Not even close. That gets us to our old pal Microsoft. Microsoft shedding about another $10 or nearly 2%, breaking the 500 handle in the wrong direction now, closing 497.10, putting up again 644,000 contracts. And the hot option out there, 45,000 of the 525 puts. That's a pretty meaty strike, listeners. Average price for these is going to be expensive, $26.23. So that's certainly one way to get short Microsoft if that's what you want to do. Obviously, these are expiring tomorrow. The low is $495, so bounced off it a little bit. Obviously, if you're buying these, you want Microsoft to continue falling out of bed tomorrow. If you're selling these, you're drawing a pretty aggressive line in the sand. Interesting stuff as we keep on rolling out to Robinhood. They had earnings, and apparently the market not liking what they're hearing. Robinhood selling off a little over 10, almost 11%, closing right around 127 even today, giving up over 15 handles out there. So bit of a rough day in Robinhood land after they've been on a nice trajectory for quite some time. Closing again, 127 and change, putting up 789,000 contracts. The hot option out there, 23,000 of the 140 calls, again, expiring tomorrow. 80 cents for these. These were opening, so I know we were there earlier in the session, but I mean, wow. If you bought these, there's not much to say about it. You need Hood to dramatically turn around in one day in order for these to even look relevant again. So that's a wild strike as we keep on rolling. Number 8, it's the fruit company, listeners. What was up in Apple land today? Apple tried to rally for most of the session, ended up closing off about a third of a point. So not a huge down day for Apple, kind of bucking the rest of the market out there. Closing 269.77, putting up 832,000 contracts. And the hot option out there, 63,000 of the 270 puts. 270 has been an interesting strike for a while. Average price for these about $1.25. So obviously, if you bought these, you want Apple to continue falling out of bed tomorrow. If you sold them, you need to hang out right here. You're going to be sweating a little bit tomorrow. As we keep on rolling to number 7, it's Pfizer, back in our top 10. That's kind of interesting. Putting up 898,000 contracts. Pfizer actually gaining about a quarter of a point, or nearly 1% today, closing $24.85. And the hot option out there, 205,000 of the Jan 20s. Also an interesting strike. An in-the-money strike. Average price for these, nearly $5, $4.90, which makes sense because they're about $5 in the money. Worth noting, it is ex-div, so bear that in mind out there, listeners. We do see some funky flow when these names go ex-div, but a little bit far out for a div play. But either way, number 7, Pfizer. Number 6, let's keep on rolling to Meta. 618.94 is where it went out, listeners, putting up 908,000 contracts and selling off nearly exactly 17 handles. 2 2/3%. So they continue to come for Meta out there, listeners. Just been an absolute drubbing post-earnings. They're off about 8% just in the last week, and over the last month, they're off about 13.5%. Of course, you take them from their highs going into their earnings, they're off quite a bit more, about 130 handles out there. So it's been quite the wild ride post-earnings for Meta. The hot option out there, going to the dark side yet again. An interesting strike yet again. It was the 675 puts, going up about 26,000 times. That is a very meaty strike. Average price for these, about $50.50. So you could do the math right now. They're worth more than that. So that's looking pretty decent if you bought them. Again, not the most capital efficient way to go, but we're seeing some weird prints out here in a kind of wild day as we keep on rolling to number 5. Listen, this is another one that's roaring into our top 10 on the back of earnings, and also looks like maybe a little bit of ex-div action. What are we talking about out here, listeners? This is Energy Transfer Unit, aka ET. Great ticker. Closing today, $16.87. Given off about a nickel, so not a huge move for them, which is why, obviously, it's the earnings and also ex-div that's driving a lot of this flow out here. And it also probably explains why we're seeing, yet again, in-the-money calls going up, dominating the tape. 208,000 of the Jan 12 calls. Some funky paper gumming up the works in our top 10 today. Number 4, let's go out to a name a few more of you are probably trading. Let's go out to AMD, 237.70. Shedding today nearly 19 handles, or 7.25%. So a rough day in AMD land. Putting up about 1.1 million contracts for the number 4 spot. The hot option out there, 58,000 of the 240 puts, listeners. Average price for these, $3.06. So those are looking decent. They need AMD, obviously, to continue dropping if those are going to break even or make some money tomorrow. If you sold them, you're going to sweat a little bit. You need AMD to bounce a little bit. Then you're looking pretty good. As we keep on rolling to number 3, Palantir not looking great, though. Palantir, 175, pretty much exactly. Selling off nearly $13, or about 7%. So a rough day for Palantir. Obviously, they've still been on quite a good run of late, but giving a lot of that back. It does seem like maybe potentially Palantir's earnings were a bit of the inflection point for a lot of people to say valuations have gotten a wee bit extreme. You can also maybe point to Meta as well out there. 1.2 million contracts on the tape for Palantir today. The hot option, though, going back to the upside, 58,000 of the 190 calls expiring tomorrow. Average price for these, $1.02. Wow. That's a great covered call. We did get up there earlier in the session. 191 was the high right at the beginning of the session. So if you bought these early in the day, that's a bit of an ouchie. If you sold them, you're looking pretty good right now. As we keep on rolling to the number 2 spot, they've been dominating a lot of the headlines these days. It's Tesla. Will they or will they not pay Musk $1 trillion? 445.91 is where the stock went out today, selling off nearly $16, or about 3.5%. Putting up 2.46 million contracts today, and the hot option out there, about 85,000 of the 450s, the 4 halves. Average price for these, $9.77. Once again, they're not giving away upside in Tesla. These are all opening prints, so if you bought these, you need Tesla to roar out of the gate tomorrow as we keep on rolling to number one, the big dog, looking a little smaller these days. It's Nvidia, 188.08, selling off another $7.13, or 3 2/3%. Coming well back below the 200 level. It's been vacillating around for a while. Putting up some decent numbers today, 4.2 million contracts changing hands in Nvidia. So the heaviest day, I should say, we've seen in some time for Nvidia. What was the hot option on a pretty hot day in Nvidia? 270,000 of the 190 puts, now in the money puts. Average price for these about $1.85, so you can do the math. They're looking pretty good right now. They went out right around $2 if you bought them. Obviously, if you own these, you need Nvidia to keep dropping or at least hang out here by tomorrow. If it rallies, then you're probably going to hope you sold these bad boys. Either way, listeners, we'll keep an eye on Nvidia tomorrow. That is going to do it for us on the Hot Options Report today. Hope you're keeping your head above water and hopefully making some money in these wild markets. Stay tuned for the Volatility Views show tomorrow, as well as Options Oddities for all of our pro members. And we're back again to wrap up your trading week with the Friday edition of the Hot Options Report. See you then, and stay safe out there.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.